Hey, you remember all those other videos where I talked about doing something different or more creative with one of these? Well, hopefully today's the day. I've decided that I want to write a theme song for the channel instead of just using a song that's already produced out on an album, little bits and pieces. In case you haven't caught it, uh, the current intro is Dead for Days off the Divide album. How I'm going to do this is using an app called Chord Gadget on iPad. I'm not going to use any live instruments to start. I'm going to go from idea in my head to putting it down on the pad. You'll be able to see that whole situation unfold. You'll see, I'm sure, one of the issues that most tactile or by feel musicians typically run into when they start programming things, which is you can't quite get the sound you want, so you start to alter and change the sound. For that reason, I'm going to try and keep this video down, no more than 20 minutes. I want to make a couple of quick changes, throw down some quick ideas, not overthink it, and then we'll continue the process in the next video. In between, I'm not going to try to monkey with this at all or change anything. So you're going to see the whole process unfold. Hopefully it comes out to be something good and something that I like or you like. As it builds up, I might start to share the audio files so that the musicians out there who are listening, if they want to try to add something in, I'd be glad to hear it. If I accept it, I'll be glad to add you credited to the intro or outro of the videos. So that being said, I'm getting way ahead of myself. We haven't even started anything yet. So let's take a quick look at this app. So this is Chord Gadget 2. Really fairly simple interface. I'm going to be looking down most of the time because my iPad is right here. My instrument of choice is going to be an Apple Pencil at the moment. Later on, we may actually add some real instruments in. In fact, more than likely we will. What I've got loaded up is their basic drum machine, which is called the London. It's a very, very simple drum machine. I'm going to give it a better look. I use samples and pads just like any other drum machine. So that's the default one that it comes up with. I do have my own setup already that I really like. It uses two different bass drum sounds, two different snare sounds. So just to give some different dynamic feels. We'll go through and use this drum set. Now, if you bought this app or were going to buy it, this is a default. You don't have to pay anything more than what you pay for the app to get this. And I'm going to try to stick to those other instruments that are like that. Of course, like everything else music-based these days, you can buy expansions and plugins and really build it out. And of course, I have a few of those, but we're not going to use those right now. We're going to just start with the basics. So if you sit down and you start doing this, you should actually be able to copy what I'm doing. Since we're going to try and keep this simple, what I'm going to do first is just extend my grid out a little bit. So I'm just going to extend this grid out to 30 seconds. So now we have 32 spaces versus the standard 16. I'm going to start up with a basic 4 on the floor beat. I put muffled bass drum kicks. So this sounds like this. We're running a tempo of, I believe the standard in this app is 128. Yep. We're going to stick with very, very basic right now. Largely because most pop songs and basic rock songs are 4/4. They're straight ahead timing. You will add other dynamics to change the feel of the song, maybe in your bridge, maybe in your chorus. But this is an intro. You wouldn't expect the intro to a 10-minute video to be a 6-minute song. So we're not going to have a lot of time for changes. We need to kind of get there and do what we're going to do. We also can't afford to be super moody. I'm not going to go through some epic saga of a song to intro this video. We're just going to start with the basic 4 on the floor. Now, basic 4 on the floor, you would use a snare on every other. There are lots of bands who have used this. The first one that comes to mind is Rammstein uses it a lot, but they do a lot of different little tricks in between to make those songs sound differently. But that beat can make a song sound very, very powerful very, very quickly. The same goes for the standard disco beats. if I go into beats, plenty of people have one of those. Regardless, they're still fun beats. You can make some really great songs with those beats. We're not gonna do that, or at least I don't think so yet. Let's stick with the 4 on the floor. Facts. So I'm playing with the snares a little bit to try and get a feel. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get a decent rock beat without going overboard with how many drums I'm adding in. Realistically, I can play the drums. I want to program something that I could actually play. I'm not an 8-arm monster, although sometimes I wish I was. I'm going to up the tempo. Go around 150. I say around and then actually select 150. That's got a good feel. That's kind of powering right in. All right, so what I'm doing right now is noodling around. I didn't really have an idea in mind, so I'm just playing with the beat itself. But I think really I want kind of a rock beat or a punk beat to start. Punk beat might be a little bit too much overkill. Maybe something like now, again, I've also intentionally not chosen not to pick very realistic drum sounds, because I find that it leads me into doing different things with the instruments. Plus, there are a lot of drum machines that don't realistically sound like drums. So you're more likely to come by one of those than a really nice one to start, unless you pick up something like the Alesis SR16. So I'm just going to add some hi-hats to add a little bit of pressure to the song. Now it's already got to feel like a pop song to me. I'm not going to call out specific songs, but I'm sure you can think of one or two of them. Anything with a cheerleader chant for sure. But I'm going to stick with it. I kind of like the feel of it for an intro. But I'd like to make it a little bit more, maybe not metal, but something a little bit more oomphy. That's a real word, oomphy. Kind of liking that beat. I might change the drum sound at some point. So we have our first beat to kind of go with. We don't have any other instruments to lead off with. So let's just play with a bass synth really quick. Now, I'm going to stick with just this monophonic synthesizer, the one that's called Berlin, because it's very simple. We're not going to get tied up in a bunch of options. I say simple, wait till you see how many switches there are. And I personally like this dark bass sound because it sounds very close to a standard bass. As far as synthesizers go. So it's got some roundness to the sound. Um, Most of these start off on third, so I'm gonna go down to a second, so it's more bass. So third. And let's start on an E because most of us learn how to write a song starting on E minor anyways. Now, I probably won't expand the grid here. I'm going to keep it simple, largely because the smaller your notes get, the more clipped they become, and a lot of them you won't be able to hear. I'm not writing polyphia. I'm writing a quick intro song. Now, I may mutate it later to make it more complicated. For now, let's stay as simple as we can. Got a really poppy drum beat. Let's kind of stick to something that's got kind of a poppy feel with the bass. So I muted the bass just so I can listen to that drum beat again. Now you might be able to hear just how they're starting to blur together a little bit. Um, there's not a huge change in the bass track. In fact, if you compared the two grids, you'd find that there's a bass note playing almost every time that there is a drum playing. I like that. That's got kind of an industrial feel. Already, I've changed my expectation of the song. I started off talking rock and punk and then said, oh, I'm going to make it a little more metal. And now I'm starting to land into this almost like industrial new wave sound because that bass is following kind of not an arpeggio necessarily, but I'm starting to kind of scale back and forth. If you were playing this on a guitar, we've got E, F, and D. If that, so if you were in drop D, you'd be playing between second, third, and open fret. But that has a sinister sound to it. I do like that. I'm gonna change up the tone of it a little bit. All right. So I'm going to add one more instrument. I think I'm going to add this Anthem synthesizer. So this synthesizer has a bigger sound to it. I'm trying to stay away from things that sound legitimately like other instruments, like strings, because strings are something you can get lost on a keyboard with. Same thing with just picking a piano. I might change them up later, but for now, I'm trying to really come up with something that's using some odd sounds and don't sound like something I could necessarily do. guitar. So let's pick on this. Make this quicker, I'm also going to copy the MIDI pattern that I used for the bass and put it onto this new synth. It's here. However, I'm going to select it and knock it up a couple of octaves. So they're not sitting in the same kind of frequency range and blurring each other up. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm not a big fan of that pumper sound. Name of the program. And so you can get lost in all these dials. It's really easy to fall into, option paralysis. You have so many things you can do. I'm just trying to find a basic sound that goes along with the melody that I've kind of got in my head. I like that. However, I also don't want to stick with a default sound because that just drives me nuts. That's like going out and getting a tattoo that's, a heart with mom written across it. No offense to the people who have them. If that's what you wanted, that's great. But it's just not something that I like to do. Now, the lever that I'm starting to play with first is pump. Pump pumps the volume up and down. So it wavers up and down, kind of emphasizing the note and can kind of create a rhythm just using the volume. Repeat is a beat repeat. It takes the note, repeats it a couple of times, similar to like a delay, but you don't lose the volume. There's no fade off. The other special thing with this is if I want some really weird sounds, I'm going to touch this knob called twist. And that's going to warp the pitch, warp kind of a back and forth rhythm on it. The problem with messing with that too much is you're going to warp off the original note that you started on. So when you go to add another instrument, you suddenly find that you started on an E, but now you're suddenly a G sharp. Or you're somewhere in this weird semitonal range where nothing really sounds good. And so if that's not your lead tone, you've kind of backed yourself into a corner. So I've played with the diffuser a little bit. As I turn the diffuser up, it separates the sound and kind of gives it more of a horn sound. I'm kind of liking that at the moment. I might add a little bit of a saturation just to give it a lower resolution sound. So I've got kind of a tone I like, but I don't want to keep repeating the same notes all the way through either. Remember that we more or less copied this exact pattern from the bass line. So they follow each other and they sound okay together, but it's not really adding a lot more to the song. Sometimes that'll help, especially if you're trying to build atmospheric feels, but I want to start to really take advantage of the pump or repeat options on the synthesizer. So and so now we kind of have our first section of the song. It's not overly complicated. we got 3 instruments going on. We have a beat to kind of start from. It doesn't really sound like an intro song to me yet. A lot of intro songs are kind of quick and to the point, and climax at the end or crescendo, and bam, you're into whatever you're watching. Some gameplays are a little funnier or goofier. This might be more of an outro for all I know yet. We really haven't gone that far. So I'm going to leave this here. And in the next video, we'll try and take this the next step further. Once we get this built up to a little bit, I might share out the stems of these tracks so that those of you who are watching can sit down and actually play with them or do things with them. If you want, if you're confident enough to send me what you're working on, I'll be happy to listen to them. And who knows? Maybe you'll have a credit in writing the new intro for this channel. So anyways, I hope this was interesting to you. Certainly it's a little bit different than what I've been doing. And yeah, I hope to see you again next week.